Alright, so we're going to do a ballpoint pen portrait. I'm actually testing out a new pen that I got from Mido in San Francisco. It's a Zebra '05 ballpoint pen. I actually bought a couple of new pens that I'll be trying to test out over some videos. And of course today I'm drawing on just some printer paper. And I'm actually working with a picture that I saw on a website called Earth's World, which I just found out about. It's probably been around for a while, it looks like, but it's new to me and I love it. It's got so many of the types of faces and heads that I'm really interested in drawing. So first things first, let me get that nice circle on there. Yeah, we're kind of testing this pen. I've never used this one before, so I'm trying to see if it behaves well. Looks like it has a little bit of bleed. You know, I'm not too worried about stuff like that. I actually kind of like little moments like that. But yeah, you know, we're gonna draw and also kind of see what we think of this pen, especially because I tend to use the Delphonics ballpoint pen a lot. That's my favorite one to draw with. Also, that'd be nice to mix up some of the colors. So I got a red, I got some blue pens, and we'll try them out. If I have time, I'll just film a couple of these in a row and maybe spread them out over a couple of different releases. So first, getting the head on there, plotting the features. I do tend to go for some of the scale or the size of the features, how they are sized, how they look, versus just using markers like lines for where things are. You know, right away I want to jump pretty quick into seeing how everything's going to look. Get that eye in there. So yeah, first impression of this pen is it's a little bleedy, right? Or it bleeds a bit, kind of smears a little bit. And again, that's okay. For someone like me, I kind of like stuff like that. I like some of that tool or that process coming through, so I'm not too concerned with that. I can tell I'm going to move some of this stuff down. This is a good time, so I need to move this chin down. This is a good time to show this. That has to come down, and hopefully, keyword hopefully, at the end of the drawing you'll see it's really not a big deal, like meaning I won't really notice just how much I had to move that or even where that original line is. It's something I used to be really a perfectionist about. I used to be really concerned about, you know, like, oh, like now I've made a mistake, what am I going to do, especially in pen. And I think drawing in pen enough times has shown me that those mistakes you can often just, you know, incorporate, you can move things around, and we really as a viewer don't notice, you know, that they were even there before. So all that to say, you know, there's my line that was from before. I had to move things down, I moved the head, and hopefully by the end of this we'll see that it all lines up. This is a good time for me to also see that my picture is just a little bit off center of the camera. So let me move that up a little bit. Okay, I think that's better. Still a work in progress. Still learning to film. You know, I've done a lot of video, like online teaching and video, but still getting my legs under me with filming videos for YouTube and things like that. Which, if you're watching this, let me start by saying thank you so much for watching. You know, I'm trying to build more content, show more of my process, make more drawings. I think if you're an artist yourself, you would even realize what's so cool about filming videos and putting content out. It's just as much an excuse for me to sit down and do some drawing, kind of have some fun with some portraits. So I appreciate you watching and checking it out and keeping me in the momentum of wanting to put some more stuff out there. Okay, so this is starting to get to a place I want. Notice on the lips, I tend to do like a little mound like that. You know, that's one of my first markers. Now you can see this pen's getting all over my hand, which again is kind of cool. Like I'll kind of play with that, or I'll see how that goes overall. Again, I don't totally mind that, but it could be an issue for some of the moves or the look I want later in some drawings. I should point out this isn't it's not a product, you know, an art supply review at all. You know, I do like stuff like that. Like I love supplies and talking about them, but you know, I think for the most part right now, this pen's pretty nice. It's very smooth. It's giving me a lot of the behavior I look for when I'm doing ballpoint pen, which would be It's just very fluid. When I start to do some shading in a second, we'll really see how that behavior goes. Okay, so I have a lot of my features planned out. They're starting to get into some spots that I like. Just kind of double checking some of my last proportions. This is where I also would simplify some of these shapes, right? So even like the outside of the head, I kind of go a little bit more linear. I start to figure out like actual points, you know, like an apex, like meaning like almost like an extreme, you know, boop, like all the way to the width and then back in. I want to kind of be more declarative about that than just purely using round, purely using curve. That's something I think I've developed a little bit later in my work. Even though I'm searching for shapes, right? Like I'm kind of scratching lines in. I do want to be conscious of that. I don't want to put too many of those lines in there. You know, too many like erroneous or kind of extra lines. I want to be a little bit mindful. This picture has really nice lighting. There's like this big shadow in front of the face. It's probably why I picked it, because that's recently, especially in my own personal work, that's been one of my favorite kind of lighting schemes, are these like big front shadows where the whole face is kind of plunged into a nice dark wash. So I'm actually going to identify some of that lighting now and then start to do some work. And this is a big part of what I would do in general. I'd put the head down, I'd plot the features, you know, then I would very specifically plot the lighting. Like I'll actually draw the lighting in, and then I'll start to get to work. And what I'll probably do is I'll probably start by even flooding some of those shadows. I say probably and things like that because even I'm always working on this process. I'm always kind of changing it. I think one of the coolest things about watching people draw, which I do all the time, is, you know, they have like a process or a way, but they're always modifying it. You know, I think it'd be to their detriment, you know, especially in art, if you were to kind of have some steps and then like always do those same steps and never quite modify or think, right? So there's that big front shadow. I'm going to get a little bit more of the anatomy in the ear. So many interesting differences among people, like in even shapes like this. Like, are these pieces of the ear skinny? Are they like thick? You know, do they feel kind of like a thread or a string? You know, do they feel kind of more like rope? One of my favorite shadows right here, I love always on the face, that little cast shadow we usually get on the ear. It just gives it a nice little bit of depth. This is, of course, like a jacket. This is just a portrait, right? Like a sketch. So then usually this is about where I'd stop. And this is where the photo stops in general. But in general, that's about where I'd stop, is some of these pieces. There's a little bit of like a cord, like on this guy's jacket, which I think is kind of important. So I'll just sort of hint at that. But again, that's the focal point, right? Like I want to focus on the face. So that's where I'm going to keep a lot of my work. It's good. I can see the time on my video. I think it's been about 8 minutes or so. So that's not too bad. Usually I'd love to be into this stage by about 5 minutes. But especially for a video, it's okay. You can see all that, all that ink smearing on there. Again, kind of cool. I might even play that. Who knows? Maybe I'll shade and kind of smudge a little. I'll see like what kind of behavior I can get. Okay. So first thing I would do is I would kind of usually the deeper darks, maybe like some of the stuff like under the nose. That's one of my favorite places to start, is I usually hit under the nose to kind of model it. And I'm kind of doing equal parts the cast shadows, like shadows coming off the nose or like deep in the socket, and then also just this overall lighting. And this is a trademark of what I tend to do. I mean, like this is something I really specifically do. I don't know if it's right or wrong, where I just sort of use the term washing. Like I start to wash shadows in, and not as dark as they need to be, kind of lightly. So I'll kind of get my pen started with that. And so by wash, I mean just like a really thin field, you know, like that of shadow. Then like these big areas that are in all shadow, I would try to wash it over that whole area before I get more specific. And this is also something I tend to think a lot about, or I work in, which is a single direction. I like to shade sort of just in a vertical direction. I usually describe this as two things. One, it kind of keeps the information simple, meaning like it's not a lot of contour, which I love. I love stuff that has contour shading, meaning it wraps around the form. But I also kind of like this minimal look where it's like all going in one direction. It's kind of like got this nice clean kind of direction and shape. And then the idea being, if I'm not going to do contour shading, like meaning I'm going to really wrap around the anatomy, then I need to keep it simple so that there's not extra information. Like I'm not putting so many different directions or like scribbles that it gets a little bit confusing about, like what I'm seeing. And the final idea with all that would be that the shadows in theory are usually a little more simple in information, right? Because as we would expect, they're darker. Although that's one of the decisions you make as you draw is, am I going to put more information in the light, right? Like the area of light, or in the shadow? In this case, I will do more work in the shadow, but while still keeping it kind of simple. Like not getting too detailed, And that's where you do these broad moves. You do moves like this where you really hit like huge areas, huge shapes of shadow. This is my focal point. So as soon as I start to get over here, I want to kind of chill out a little bit. Like I want some shadow like in this ear for sure, what I see, but I also want it to be kind of light or start fading a little bit, because that's outside of my focus, my focal point over here. Tons of smear on here, right? Again, I kind of like it. The question would be now that I say, oh yeah, I like it, but I think what would look better to my viewer is if I get more intentional about it as well. Like if I have it over here, I'll probably have to intentionally put some over on the right side as well. But I kind of like it, that little messy look, especially because I tend to finish a lot of my pieces like that with some mess. So this guy has a shaved head, like he does have like a little bit of hair, so I'll have to figure that texture out in a second. But when I come back over here and start reinforcing, two things. One, where the shadows are really dark, especially like cast shadows under the nose or kind of like deep in the shadow, start reinforcing those, and then of course start bringing out some of these features. So you can start to see a little bit more of the nose or the eye or the lips. So this is where I do spend a lot of time looking at my reference picture, always darting my eyes back and forth between the two. And this is a big part of what I do as an action, is just, again, like washing. Like just layer after layer of ink, of pen. Wash, meaning like it's more like a field. It's not like super teeny tiny shading. It's more just like these passes where I'm hitting multiple areas at once. This is a very deep crease in his face. I don't want to outline. That's one of the bigger things. Even though I did sketch and kind of lined shapes, I try not to like put a lot of thick or direct outlines. So if I want to make an edge like this crease in his face, I want to do it more through shading like that versus kind of carving it out, right? And all of that would be, in my opinion, like a little bit of an homage to painting. Like kind of having like edges that are more interesting or varied like painting, versus like full on line work. Again, I love this. This is one of my absolute favorite scenarios in lighting, is getting that face in the shadow. Also liking the red. Red is an interesting color because it doesn't have like a very dark value. So if you were to like black and white this drawing, it's not going to be very high in contrast, or even like have a lot of parts that look really deep and almost like black. But that can be nice because that can kind of give your drawing some atmosphere, where it kind of makes it a little bit thinner. And in drawing in general, I think one of the harder ideas, but one of the cooler things, is to try to be, like more reserved about contrast. Like actually having less contrast in your pictures. It's kind of a weird full circle idea in drawing, where we start by doing like really sometimes low contrast. Like we don't press hard enough. We're kind of intimidated by darks and like shading and like really getting into, the deep shadows of something. So we start kind of timid sometimes in drawing. Then we learn a lot about lighting or shading, and we start to put a lot of contrast. So then we sort of put almost too much contrast sometimes, like we almost force a lot of like contrast into an image. And then we kind of go back, and we kind of circle back to going lighter, less contrast, but being more nuanced or decisive about it, like kind of understanding why things are low contrast, along with knowing when and where to use it, which of course, like the main contrast again is focal point. You can see all these little like bleeds or dots from this pen. You know, I think everyone has different terms in ballpoint pen for that, you know, kind of like goop or whatever. Sometimes people, I think, wipe it off. I'm just going to let it ride because, again, it's kind of cool. I sort of like it. I should point out that I'm by no means a dedicated ballpoint pen, you know, sketch artist or person, so I don't even know like some of the terms or even too many people doing it. I know some people just casually, but I like it a lot. You know, again, I like using ballpoint pen a lot because it is an ink quality that kind of transcends into almost the subtlety we see in pencil and graphite. I think that's why we like it as artists and even as viewers, is you can get these really subtle moments. So that's, again, a good like idea of identification, a good idea of some of these features starting to show a little bit more. Notice how I've tried my best in theory. You know, I'd have to watch instant replay, but I've tried my best to never like carve lines. All the edges I'm building, I'm trying to build through shading, through light. And again, that's drawing for sure, but you could also imagine that that's a lot of like what painting is about, right? Like building lines through different edges meeting. So again, the part that's in light, I'm going to kind of leave blown out because that's the idea. Is now the light's going to be very simple, like not much nuance in here. You know, there's some nice like little, I think they're called like a skin tag or like a mole, right? There's like some little moments in there that are really wonderful to kind of show the character of this man's face. But yeah, I'll largely leave this alone. Then the final thing I do need to figure out is a little bit of texture to imply that he does have hair. It's just very short, you know, which I think I'll kind of do just like a squiggle or kind of like scribble a little bit in areas to imply that. So again, low contrast, speaking of, not a lot of dark or work over here because I want you looking here, right? I want you, and I can do that by even pushing some of these darks, you know, by layering up just more and more and more layers to kind of draw your eye to the huge variety of value over here, dark, light, gray, everything in between, and then keep it simple on this side, even in here in the jacket, keep those areas kind of simple. So we keep stuff simple by low contrast, like not using a lot of light and dark and varieties or variations of it. And then also we can make things simple like here in this chin to jacket area. We can also do this where we sort of really blur the edge or blur what is what. It's like we kind of wipe over everything together so it kind of joins together, and then also that in itself makes it feel less detailed. This is more nuanced, right? Where I'm kind of really like nitpicking and kind of like needling into this area to bring that eye out and all the subtleties. And then down there, again, this gets way more simple where we just kind of wipe over a lot of this stuff. And again, the edges get more simplified. Even the marks, right? This is small mark, this starts to get large. You know, there's all these devices in drawing that we can use for drawing the eye, and then for what's contrast. Contrast just isn't light, right? Like it's not just the act of like using light or dark. It can also be simple and complex. It can be, you know, sharp and blurry, which we're doing with even those areas of pen that are kind of less focused, right? So a lot of things we can use to kind of show contrast and to direct someone's eyes. So he has like this nice kind of like eyebrow overgrowth, which I like. These are those ideas in drawing a face that I like, where it's truly human. And I think this website, Earth's World, which I'll definitely link in the description, I think that's what's so cool about this website, is it's just full of like my exact type of person, everyday people. And then people that have like a lot of character in their face, you know, be it the shape, be it kind of the experience you can see in their face. Those are the people I absolutely love to draw, because I think there's a lot of story, there's a lot of narrative, and more importantly for me personally, it's just less arranged. You know, it's like this is drawing someone from life, truly, like a true human. You know, even my name on here on YouTube, Documentary. The whole point of that, it was to draw and document, you know, which I'm just barely starting to scratch the surface of what that could mean or what that could look like. But that's the whole point of the name, is to draw and to document, you know, the combination of those two. So this is a point too where I'm saying to myself, okay, I'm getting kind of in a cool place I like. You know, I got to figure that hair out soon. And then also I don't want to overwork. It's one of the one of the easiest things we can do is just put too much work and too much effort. And I'm always like kind of zooming my eyes out to see like how this looks. You can see all those little goops, by the way. I'll come up with my own word clearly because everyone else has their own word, right? Okay, so he does have a very thin, like super almost to the scalp shaved head. So what I think I'm going to do is slow it down a little bit here so I don't draw a focus, but otherwise give him just this slight kind of like scribble to imply hair. And even as I do it, I have to ask myself, I wonder how much of this I have to put through here to like communicate. But I want to, of course, respect the man I'm drawing. He has this very, very tight shave to his head, so I don't want him to have just skin. I want to show, he actually even has like a really nice deep hairline, like going deep into his forehead. So a lot of this idea of like building a texture would be to be organic. So meaning don't just go tick, 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 like all the same move, but be a little bit varied in there, varied in size, and especially for something like this, varied in clumping. So meaning, clump some of it together, make like these little groups of it, and then occasionally maybe spread one out by itself, and I try to do it quickly because I don't want to be too organized about it. I don't want to think too hard about it because that's where it starts to feel like a pattern. And I think at this point I can tell like, oh, I'm in it, meaning like I have to kind of give him a lot of these little marks to imply like he has that thin amount of hair, even like overlap a little bit of them. And that's okay. Again, I would love to know the person or the artist who thinks, oh, I have every one of these decisions figured out as soon as I sit down or as soon as I look at it, and you could definitely sit and look at something long enough, but I much prefer trial by fire. I want to throw myself into this drawing and, as I even said at the beginning, think to myself, I have no idea how I'm going to do this hair. I don't know how to make it, a good decision or communicated well to my viewer. You just have to go for it. And if it doesn't look good, like if it doesn't come out right, it's not like the best decision. It's okay. You'll get it on the next one or the one after that. But, just be at all times, right? Be very bold about like, what are you going to do in a drawing? How are you going to solve a texture? How are you going to provide a big variety of textures, right? There's a lot of cool stuff like that. That's part of the process. That's part of the fascination with drawing is you're constantly problem solving. Okay, so this is feeling good because I can tell that I don't have to quite fill this all in. I'm starting to get enough of a quantity that you can feel he has the hair. So then what I want to do is actually where the light's really hitting him right here, that's where I'll kind of slow it down. So I'll start to fade. This is one of the hardest things in ink to think about, is that you can fade with quantity. Meaning like fading is not just like a shade or like a smooth gradation, right? Like a blend. It can be like a blend or a fade just from quantity, like going less and less, like from a lot over here to less and less and less, all the way until it starts to disappear. There's one of those little goops. So yeah, this is I gotta come with my word. This is definitely a gooper, this pen. I'll start a slime goop. I'm gonna find my word, and then the more I do video-wise, of course, I'll stay consistent with that term. So yeah, again, I'm starting to feel good where it's got enough to show the hair, but I'm not having to do the whole field. I can really start to skip it here towards the end. Notice how I kind of jump around too. I go like over here a little bit, down here, because I'm trying to build evenly. If I tunnel into one area too much, I might put too much in there, without kind of relating it to everything else. And this still feels okay in terms of like not being too distracting compared to like all my nice kind of contrast and like subtlety on this side of his face. And I have to be sure it's not too extreme, right? So one thing I was just thinking is, I think I could go like just a touch darker. This is a very deep field of dark inside of his ear. There's like some little like shadow in his face like that. So between this like whole blank area here, final trademark, meaning like a thing that I do, and I don't think trademark is cool. I actually think of it more like this is a thing I do that is right or wrong. Like, I don't know, it's probably wrong, but it's just the way I like to draw and think would be, you saw my structure at the beginning, you saw that big circle, and I don't care. I really don't. I like leaving that circle in there, or I'm happy it's in there. It doesn't bother me. It really doesn't distract me. And again, I kind of like process in drawing, so I think that would be one of my ultimate process moves. By the way, we can check in over here. This was the original chin. This little thin line, I can't even really see it too much anymore, which is in theory a big win on the drawing. Thinking to myself, okay, good. Like I was able to move that, and it didn't really create any issues. You know, it didn't really like stay there or feel distracting. Okay, so I still feel like this is really a big, wide white, kind of like between everything, even though I want some blowout. So last thing I'll do is he has like a little bit of his cheekbone. Really nice to be able to see that anatomy. So I'll just kind of, there again, like kind of fade. Like this is high detail, this is lower detail, so got to go somewhere in the middle just to kind of make the viewer feel not too, like not too kind of, it's not too jarring, right? To kind of go from one area to the other. So this is stuff we'd probably for the most part call like midtones, like things in the white area that are turning away, right? I've learned so much over the years to be very chill, very toned down with the eye. You know what I mean? As long as you can read it and see even like that little shine in there, don't go too definite or too crazy with it. Part of the life of the eye is to actually keep it really kind of in motion and subtle, you know, not to like walk it down with a bunch of like really strong lines. That's what makes it feel very alive, like it could move, right? Even, or something like that, which again, that took me a very long time to learn, and I still learn every day. So much ink on my hand. Okay, and then my final idea is an action I like a lot, which is to just sort of hit a couple of like quick scribbles. And what I love is that's a move I can't control. You know, it's like it's something I kind of put in there that's very fast, very out of control. And in a drawing where I'm trying to use some sense of control or some sense of, you know, detail and strategy, etc. Like I kind of like having this moment, especially in the very end, that's hard to replicate or just is again very random. You know, it's kind of like another last device of contrast. You know, hopefully something that feels controlled and tight, and then kind of like some action. And I also think of it like that. It's kind of like an animation almost. It kind of gives a little bit of movement. And yeah, I think I'm going to call it. Here I go into my like overworking phase, kind of hitting too much stuff at this point. So I think I'm going to call it. And I'll cut this video off. This is a perfect time. It's almost about 30 minutes. So I'll be doing some more of these, and I'll test out some more pens too, because again, I actually got a bunch of new ballpoint pens, and I'm curious to try them out. And it's definitely time to go wash my wash my hands. So yeah, we'll end the video with a nice scan of the piece so you can see it. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.